two, three.
The Bottom Line, presented by Vantage Circle, is a web series that sifts through the noise, discussing the latest thinking regarding employee rewards and recognition. My name is Matt Burns, and I'm excited to be your host, featuring myriad guests from all across industries and disciplines. And today, I'm happy to be joined by Lisa Nicholson, the Director of Human Resources at DEX Imaging. Lisa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. I appreciate this.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. Two HR people talking about all things rewards and recognition. What could possibly go wrong?
I absolutely agree.
Well, before we get into see what goes wrong, maybe a bit about your background, your experiences, Lisa, and what's led you to this point.
Absolutely. So I've been in the industry that's the human resources industry for probably the last 25 years. I started out in recruiting. I moved to what is now a Fortune 200 company in my past, and they were in huge growth mode. And so I got to grow with them within recruiting, within learning and development, ended up being their corporate HR manager, having global responsibilities, and then turned around and ended my career there in their mergers and acquisitions. And I did that because as I evolved with them, there was so many culture changes happening throughout the organization, just with the growth mode. And as we started to onboard new people into that, I wanted to make sure that it was a seamless transition. And so it was kind of cool to go out and be a part of the acquisitions, but also be responsible for making sure that the employee experience coming over to the company that I loved was a good experience so that they also loved that company. And so as of 3 years ago, I actually jumped ship and came over to DEX Imaging. As we say, went across the bridge from St. Petersburg, Florida to Tampa. And now I've been with DEX Imaging, like I said, for about 3 years. And I am head of human resources.
Well, and DEX has its own pretty cool story. I mean, from a small mom and pop organization, now DEX Imaging is America's largest independent copier dealer. And I guess for those who in the audience who may not be familiar with DEX, would you mind just sharing a bit more about the organization's scale and scope?
Absolutely. So you're correct. DEX is the nation's leader in copier and solution sales. So there's solutions inside there, and we're known for our customer service. So, what I mean by looking at copiers and solutions is that it's not just about selling a copier out there. It is all about looking at how our customers are using technology. What are they doing today? What do they need to do tomorrow? And really coming up with a solution that works well for them in that process. And then looking at what they need from a service perspective. So it's a really cool process to see happen. I didn't realize there was so many steps in just looking at technology and how you need to use technology from a copier perspective. But we have branches and a service model across all of the United States. We make sure that we are wherever our customers are so that we can give them the best customer service that we can give them. We've definitely earned the trust and confidence of our customers by just giving them great customer service each and every day, which is, I think, what sets us really apart from everybody else.
Well, I'll add one more thing that sets you apart from everybody else. And I'll be honest, while I was researching the organization, one thing that stood out for me right off the bat was the amount of community involvement at DEX Imaging. I mean, you guys donate 1/3 of your profits to charities, educational institutions, and people that are making the world a better place. First off, that's pretty incredible. So thank you for doing that. And secondly, maybe a bit more about, I'd love to learn a bit more about the importance of DEX's culture of giving and how they give back.
Yeah. So, the story goes when Dan Jr. decided to start DEX Imaging, he pulled his father out of retirement. He had been a copier person from years back, and he came out of retirement. And one of his stipulations was that they give back 1/3 of their profits to charities. It's all about making a positive impact to all of the communities that we live in. There's no national mandate for a charity, which I love. It is all about partnering with organizations where our people are. It's partnering with the communities that they live in. And sometimes some of these partnerships have personal meanings to them.
Mm.
It may be something like a soup kitchen that's supporting family members of theirs, or maybe giving back to an educational system that their kids actually go to that school. So it really gives our people great pride to support the people in their own backyard. And it really helps DEX to achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is really to be a part of our community.
Well, and you joined DEX at a pretty interesting time. It was the tail end of the pandemic and in the midst of the great resignation. I mean, let's be honest, not an easy time for any HR leader to join an organization. I'm just curious, what was your mandate in joining the organization and what were those first few months like?
Yeah, I joined 8 months into the pandemic, and I came in, there's no rule book for this type of pandemic. HR had not really, in my lifetime, lived through anything like this. And so, not only am I joining during a pandemic, I have to learn about DEX imaging and the people and the culture, et cetera. And so, when I came on board, I really liked the family feel of DEX. It really drew me to the company. But then as I got here, I really started to feel the passion amidst this huge pandemic where we had service techs out at the hospitals because hospitals still needed to print paper, right? And they're suited up in PPE, just like all the doctors, to make sure that they're safe. That was number one priority on DEX's plate. And they were out there servicing copiers to make sure copiers were still running in the midst of these pandemic. It really showed me that there was a great sense of pride, and it really reinforced that loyalty that the people had for the company. So it felt really good coming on to the company. A few months later, after I got here, we hit this whole great resignation, right? Where everybody was fleeing their companies, and talk about uncharted territory, talk about not having really a great reason to show my CEO and my CFO why people were just fleeing, because it was about money, a lot of it. You had a whole group of people that we were trying to bring back in the office that were like, I like working from home. I don't want to come back into the office. And then I had this whole group of people that, for the first time, as loyal as they were to DEX, thought about jumping ship to go down the street for an over-exaggerated amount of money that people were throwing at people to try to find good people that wanted to work. I will tell you, coming out of that, what I saw was the grass was not greener. We found a lot of our loyal people, if they decided to go test the waters, come back to DEX later, and we absolutely brought them back. I also found it fascinating as I just looked across all companies in our area. What the pandemic, I think, taught us is that we really needed to look at how we incentivize our population. We kind of just had picnics and stuff that we did on site, but when people were remote, we really started to look at how do we motivate our employees? How do we motivate them, whether they're remote, whether they're in front of us? Social events. I loved virtual happy hours, a significant amount of gift cards that came, thrown out at people so that people felt still connected. But I think it really gave companies a time to sit back as well and figure out, how do I need to motivate people in order to stay with my company, and not motivate them just purely on giving more money.
Right. Well, and now that we're in this post-pandemic landscape, which in and of itself, to your point, is uncharted territory, most senior leaders that I speak with are addressing problems around generational differences, whether that be, to your point, demographic challenges in terms of the workforce turnover, or even just trying to work together in this new hybrid world of work going forward. I'm curious, what have you noticed insofar as generational differences at DEX?
I think some of the things that we're seeing is the copying industry has been around for a long time. And again, I talked about that loyalty and those people that came on board with DEX because they've known both Dans for a very, very long time. And so we've got this whole generation that are loyal and that are here because this is what they've done forever. And what works for them works for them. And then we started to introduce, which has been my focus, a new generation of people who can come in and sell solutions and sell technology. And they're very systems driven. They're very technology driven, where I've got some of our baby boomers out what we call hot knocking down the street to sell copiers. Our Gen Xers want to go onto LinkedIn and connect social media to a much broader population. And so, what we have been seeing is a real need to value both points of view, and really look at how do we cross-pollinate and how do we cross-help, right? So, it's one of those things where you teach me, I'll teach you. So if maybe I have folks who have never really been in systems through the whole life cycle of the sales cycle, I've got another generation that loves the fact that we've automated all of that. And they're helping each other learn how to use automation, but also the generation that's been here for quite some time and in the copying industry for quite some time are teaching the younger generations what they need to know in order to close a deal. So it's really been a great opportunity for us to really look at those generations and how we can look at what the positive is in those differences and how we can actually leverage that for both generations, right? I think that, what the generations all need and what we learned about looking at all of that is everybody wants to be thanked, right, for a good job done. And everyone wants to be recognized no matter what generation they are. And so that was really a story that came out of all of that was everybody is motivated by very similar things.
You've alluded to it. We talked about compensation and people making the decision to ultimately leave DEX but return because of loyalty and obviously the corporate values. You just talked about recognition and that being a key part of the corporate culture. I'm just curious, what was the overall state of rewards and recognition when you arrived at DEX? What did you see? What did you experience? What did you hear from the organization?
So DEX is in growth mode and spreading out across all of the United States. And so recognition was happening at the branch level, at every branch, and maybe not in every department. But what I saw was maybe St. Petersburg, Florida, had an employee of the month for the top sales rep. Our service team out of our North Carolina region was having the top service team award. What we didn't have was a way to unite it all and to understand it all. For HR to understand recognition and what was happening, we literally had to go not only out to every branch, but we had to talk to every department in each of those branches to see what people were doing. Wow. And really had to look at what is something that we could do to unite everybody together so that we were looking at this from a bigger picture, but also so that the branches could come together and celebrate together all the great accomplishments that everybody was doing. And so it was a lot of work. Again, we're across all of the United States, but it was worthwhile to see that they were doing some really great things out there and how we could potentially leverage some of that and or what were some of the gaps that we needed to solve for.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you want to keep your localized, to your point, culture in individual locations. And you also want to celebrate the broader organizational success and transfer knowledge and move talent around. So it's trying to find that balance is always a difficult challenge for any HR leader. And speaking of challenges, you and I have been in the HR profession for many years. And I think one of the most challenging things for HR leaders today is navigating the confusing and complicating and ever evolving world of HR technology. Whether it's buying technology, integrating technology, or, integrating it within your existing systems and getting adoption internally, HR tech can be a confusing and complicated and sometimes painful place. Seemingly every other day, there's a new solution in the market that says, Lisa, we can solve everything in the world. Just sign the bottom line here. I'm curious, how did you and your team navigate that noisy landscape and trying to find that solution? And what criteria were you looking for as you landed on the solution for DEX?
So as I mentioned, we had to go out to every site and talk to every site. We not only talked to our managers, we talked to the people. And everything we heard was it's got to be easy and it's got to feel as though it's very genuine, right? We needed something that would fit every generation and that everybody would use. And so we sat down after we did all of those visits and we wrote a list of criteria. And that criteria was things like it has to be easy for our employees. It has to be customizable, right, to fit our needs. We wanted single sign-on so that people didn't have to go into a different tool. We needed analytics from an HR perspective because, of course, I need to be able to show ROI on what it is that we're doing. We also had to make sure that with the staff that I had, which was a fairly lean staff, that it could encompass more programs than just recognition around thank you. It had to actually encompass things like celebrating birthdays and anniversaries and wherever else we could leverage recognition programs. I also noticed people were giving out gift cards everywhere I turned around, and it was a feat to try to look at, okay, let's do gift cards in a way that we're supposed to be looking at gift cards and accounting for gift cards out in the organization. And then one of the last things that popped up was, and we actually didn't pull this into this criteria until we met with the company we're with now, but we were really looking for a way that we could actually survey our folks and how these methods were working and were people getting the most out of them. And so we really set forth this long list of needs for our organization. And we were pretty passionate about the fact that it had to meet all of those needs.
Well, and of course, because, to the earlier conversation, you guys have a complicated business that is dispersed. Culture is really important, as is recognition and reward. And you want to make sure that this tool is an extension of that, and you don't have to adapt your culture to fit the technology, which would seem to be very backwards. But 10 years ago, that was the way most HR technologies were constructed, with the administrator in mind and not really with the employee or the user at the center of the experience. So I'm glad you guys created that laundry list of requirements. And it sounds like you found a solution that worked for you. So, frankly, what tipped the scales in favor of Vantage Circle?
So they absolutely clicked every box that we had, which a lot of companies did. I will say that the Pulse tool was a huge plus for us, that they have that built into their tool, which was not something we saw out there with a lot of the tools. But as we looked at what we wanted to do and achieve with our recognition program, they were able to customize for what we needed. And it wasn't crazy customization so that when they do an update, the system wouldn't update because of how we've customized the tool. Ultimately, the team that we sat down with during the sales process took everything that was on that list of stuff that we wanted to achieve, and they were able to map out for us exactly how their tool would get us over the finish line. And ultimately, as we were talking to them, we, from a bigger picture perspective, realized that not only would this be a good recognition tool, but another thing that I was trying to accomplish from a cultural aspect was to pull everybody together. Everybody's out there working every day, but they all come back to what we call now the hive. They all come back to one central location, and everybody brings back all the goodness that they're doing every day. And we needed an opportunity to be able to say thank you, but also for people to have visibility to what that was on a day-to-day basis. So this tool just actually fit all those purposes.
Now I'm curious, as somebody who's implemented my fair share and then some of HR technologies over the course of my career, I'm always curious about what happens after you sign the contract, the ink is dry, and now we're into implementation, user adoption, user training. How much time did it take for you guys to bring the solution to life? What did it look like in terms of resourcing and change management? And just talk me through a bit about the implementation process.
Yeah. That's the heavy lifting, right? It's one of those things that everything looks great once you've signed the contract, but then the real work starts. And I will say that, I have to admit, I've implemented a lot of tools in my time, and this was probably the simplest tool I've put in place. I was amazed at how simple it was. We had a great team on the Vantage Circle side. I had a handful of people, because again, I was a lean organization, a handful of people on my side. They have great calls for implementation, always prepared to map out what we went over in the last call to make sure that our expectations are being met. And by the way, being upfront with us if something was not going to meet our expectations in regards to maybe it was something that down the line they were willing to implement, but something that we needed as an add-on later. I really thought that being able to present back to us and over communicating to us through that process got us over the finish line. And it only took a couple of months. So we were on live, I want to say within 90 days of signing the contract. We were moving and grooving and doing testing and making sure all our managers were loaded and budgets were loaded and how the approval process was going. It was seamless.
Well, now you're 3 months post-implementation. What have some of the lessons learned been since you guys have flipped the switch? And has anything surprised you post-implementation?
So I will tell you, what has surprised me the most is the level of engagement we've had across our organization immediately. Day one, the second we turned it on, we've over 8,000 logins to date. And that is incredible to me, right? We have a ton of peer-to-peer and peer-to-manager recognition happening across our organization every day. It's allowed for our employees immediately to feel part of the bigger company and a part of the bigger success and know what's going on. You know, we've learned that to embed this in our culture, it's really important from an HR perspective to make sure we're keeping the buzz about this alive every day, because it doesn't just immediately embed into your culture, right? You do have to keep it alive and keep people thinking about it so that someday it just becomes a part of how you work. And we've seen that where folks are very good at going into the system. We've seen that they're sharing best practices across different functional areas with managers on finding the time to get into the tool. I think probably a big surprise, Vantage Circle committed to our success with the tool, that they were going to deliver what they were going to deliver, and it absolutely did deliver what it needed to deliver. And we customized, right? Our Hive has badges that are special for what we need, and we had some divisional things that we needed to do in regards to cross-functional recognition. And I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised that they were able to react very quickly when we needed something special to customize. But overall, it's been a really good time in the Hive, and I think that it's something that we've really embraced as a company, which again, I was really surprised how quickly everybody and every generation in our company has embraced it.
Well, I think that speaks to the work that you did up front with the Vantage Circle team. I mean, you talked about customization, but customization ultimately is to achieve adoption. And so congratulations to you and your team for putting in that hard work up front. And the proof is in the pudding. You guys have had incredible success, incredible traction. And whether it's cross-pollination of ideas, whether it's peer-to-peer recognition or management to peer recognition, really significant take up across all those areas. But I'm curious, again, from the HR perspective, how did you approach those two lenses differently? I mean, peer-to-peer recognition probably looks a little bit different at DEX than manager to employee recognition. How did you approach each one of those different scenarios and to ensure that you got that validation up front?
So I think that manager was the harder of the two, right? Managers are very busy. And so to really look at how our managers would not only utilize the tool, but utilize the tool across the organization. They had a lens for what was going on in their organization. And now it was giving them the ability to have a broader lens and really to think maybe somebody in a distribution center that was maybe 4 branches away, but really to scope for them what they could achieve from a recognition perspective in pulling together larger teams and really, again, embedding that gratitude in that it takes an army, right? A whole group of people to get this done as opposed to just what was right in front of you, making it happen day to day. I really think that the managers have embraced the fact that it's not just about their team, it's about the larger team. I think for our employees, they're having a lot of fun with it. Number one, it almost it's embedded that culture of gratitude, but in a way that is not in their face. It is embedded gratitude where people want to go out there and see whose birthday it is. They want to go out there and see who's been here for the last 25 years and their anniversary dates pop up. They want to go out there and see, they heard through the grapevine we got a new account, and they can go out to Vantage Circle and see us giving kudos to somebody for landing a great brand new account and who was a part of that. And by the way, if they wanted to, like you said, build off of that, who are those contact people that they could utilize? So it's really grown a lot into a way to connect all of our locations. And I think that has made the adoption and why we've had so many hits inside the tool so quickly is because it basically gave people the ability to see into all of the branches when they didn't have that before.
Hmm. Well, you made it your own. You made the tool customized to fit the unique requirements of DEX Imaging, and that's a great testament into how you use technology to better your mission, your values, and ultimately to have more success. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really cool behind the scenes look. I'm just curious, what's next for DEX Imaging, or for you particularly?
So we are, again, in growth mode. And so right now we are focused on organic growth and developing our talent from within. And so that's all the fun stuff for me in HR. We're looking at great platforms and ways in which we can look at some programs that we can focus on performance, goals, development plans, training, and what our organization needs to be for the future. So with the rest of the company, we're automating a lot of stuff that had been pen and paper before, and really giving our managers an easy way to look at their overall population, but also giving the employees some insight into being able to communicate what they want to do at DEX and how that becomes realization based on maybe a training plan or a career development plan. So it's really exciting right now. The Vantage Circle piece, click the button on us, knowing what each other are doing. And now we're on to looking at how we better grow the organization for our future needs.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great getting to know you, a bit more about DEX Imaging and the future that's so bright ahead of you.
Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.